Right, so whenever you want to know what a government is really up to, news of a leak of their intentions to the media is often the most revealing, and allegedly leaked documents from the Israeli Ministry of Intelligence, no less, might have just told the world what Benjamin Netanyahu's actual plans for the Gaza Strip are. And it should probably surprise nobody at this point that it amounts to yet another land grab. According to these documents, Israel wants to push the 2 million or so civilian inhabitants of the Gaza Strip over the border and into the Sinai desert in Egypt. The plan, according to this, is to depopulate Gaza. Right, so is it so hard to believe that Israel's endgame here is to depopulate Gaza? I don't think so. You don't even have to go back any further than the events of the 7th of October to see that. The indiscriminate bombing, the alleged rescue of hostages that for some reason involves bombing churches and hospitals, the targeting of Hamas in their tunnels, though airstrikes hardly seem to be the best solution if they're hiding underground. Also, make your minds up, Israel, are they in the tunnels or hiding in civilian infrastructure? We can't decide which, or don't actually care. We keep hearing about the numbers of civilians who have died, numbering in the thousands, almost half of whom are children, but pray do tell how many Hamas operatives have been killed or captured. That's a stat I've never heard. I've not heard those numbers yet. Only that. At any rate, the Israeli Ministry of Intelligence, it would appear, have a leak, because their plans for Gaza at the end of the day might just have been exposed. A 10-page document had been leaked to the Israeli magazine Mekomit. You might imagine an Israeli publication wouldn't run an anti-Israeli story, an anti-Netanyahu story. However, Mekomit, I do hope I'm saying that right, are a joint enterprise of Israeli and Palestinian journalists, citizen journalism, as they call it. So they're very much an alternative media kind of a source. Their about pages state that they are committed to democracy, are resisting the occupation. To be honest, reading up on them, it made me wonder why Benjamin Netanyahu has truly allowed them to persist. But at any rate, they're no friends of the regime. And that's likely why they ran this story. And indeed, this information was leaked to them and their man, Yuval Avraham, a chap whose personal bio on the site says he's all about a dream of justice and equality for all the inhabitants of the country, between the river and the sea. Yes, he says that in his blurb, which apparently is an anti-Semitic thing to say amongst the idiot politicians we keep electing in this country. So, 10 pages of this document. I'd seen a few passages translated on social media because the website of Mekomit is understandably in Hebrew, as is the leaked document, but thank goodness for Google Translate, one downloaded PDF and translation later, and I have the whole thing in English. Essentially, what it boils down to is Israel looking at three options, three alternatives to the status quo, as it were, even though the status quo is where Israel hold all the cards already, isn't it, and treat the Gazan population as POWs in effect, given they control everything that goes in and out of the Strip, not least the people there. Here's what the executive summary says. The state of Israel is required to bring about significant change in the civilian reality in the Gaza Strip in light of crimes by Hamas that led to the Iron Swords War, which is what Israel are calling this latest conflict. For that, it must decide the political goal in relation to 1, the civilian population of Gaza, which must be pursued at the same time as the overthrow of the Hamas regime. 2, the target to be defined by the government requires intensive action to harness the US and other countries in support of this goal. So, basically, under the auspices of rooting out Hamas, Israel plans on changing the basic way of life for all Palestinians, and this must be done at the same time. I've often wondered how they can work out who is Hamas and who isn't, given Hamas don't exactly advertise their presence. They don't wear a uniform. Is this why they have to deal with both civilians and Hamas at the same time? Is that their excuse? It's also notable they require the US and other countries, i.e. us here in the UK, let's not be funny about it, we'll be there too. They'll be talking about supporting countries here to aid them in that. So if you were wondering why ceasefires aren't being backed in Western pro-Israel governments and wannabe governments in the case of Keir Starmer, then this is a good indicator as to why that might actually be the case. In order to deliver on both of these directives, the Israeli state are making 3 assumptions because, well, making assumptions at a time of war, that's never going to be a bad thing, is it? Anyway, their 3 basic assumptions to make their directives work are 1, the collapse of Hamas, 2, the evacuation of the population outside the combat zone in the interests of the citizens of the Gaza Strip, yeah, right, and 3, plan and channel international aid. Okay, so the first one is obvious as to why Israel would want that. The third point on aid, I would heavily question aid for whom, because it doesn't say. And if Israel are channeling where it will go, who's to say it's ever going to reach any Palestinians? Especially when you consider point 2, to remove civilians from the combat zone. Well, why is that a thing? Have you not already told people in the north to evacuate to the south? Do you mean you're going to help those that can't evacuate? The hospital patients that you might be threatening to bomb? Babies and incubators to move south and get them out of the way? Well, I very much doubt that, since Israel has been bombing the south as well, hasn't it? Targeting civilians, even targeting the Rafah crossing border, who have done as they've been instructed to do after all. They've moved south. They've gone south and you've bombed them anyway. Or you've bombed them en route, as you've seen convoys travelling north to south targeted as well. Well, let's come on to those three options I mentioned at the start. The three options before Israel, according to this leaked document, that they have before them. The three alternatives to how things currently are. The first alternative is that the population remain in Gaza and they bring in Palestinian Authority rule. In other words, Israel ending the blockade, on the face of it, and allowing the Gaza Strip to be governed by the same authority currently running the West Bank, running in the loosest possible sense, though. Well, the West Bank still gets targeted by Israel, of course, so this to me wouldn't change anything from the Palestinian perspective at all as to where we are now. It'd be a change on paper, by and large. Israel would still control them to all intents and purposes and carry on treating them like animals as they do now. The second alternative is that the population remain in Gaza, and Gaza runs itself independent of Israel and the West Bank, running itself, its own authority. That, again, sounds okay on paper. I'm sure they would like that, but they need control over all of their comings and goings over the border as a result, and all the resources that are currently being controlled by Israel. Would that all come as part of that deal? Because if not, again, what actually changes? But the third alternative is the one that has alarms going off in people's heads. Evacuation of the population of Gaza into the Sinai. That's going a fair bit further than sending half the population of the Gaza Strip south. That's sending all 2.2 million people into the Sinai desert of Egypt. Doesn't Egypt get a say in this? Besides, once you've eliminated Hamas, what guarantee does the world have that you'd let them all back in afterwards? After all, you've not got a good track record for doing that, have you, Israel? I've said from the get-go that this is all about a land grab, and if Israel force out the people of Gaza, they will seize Gaza Strip for themselves and strip it and just add it to Israeli property, and in would come the settlers. To no surprise whatsoever, I'm sure to you, this is the favourite option. Israel doesn't like the idea of Palestinian rule in any form because they suffer strategic implications for Israel, and they are also seen, particularly Alternative 1, as victories for the Palestinian national movement and harm Israel's security. Now, they like the idea of forcing people out into the desert. How very biblical of them. In their words, this is the alternative that will yield positive and long-term strategic results for Israel. Yeah, by making all those people Egypt's problem. How long before many of them would end up becoming other countries' problems, though? How many of them would end up on small boats crossing the channel wanting to come here as time went on? Our government, Roar Starmer's pretense of an opposition, will call for a ceasefire. So if this comes to pass and these people come here, it'll be on them too. All the more so if the UK becomes one of the countries to assist in this matter. We know the US will. Are we really not going to go there, therefore? Of course we will. Push the Palestinians off more of their land. Of course, this is what Israel favours. They've been doing it since 1948. They haven't finished the job, and with Gaza gone, they can turn all their focus on the West Bank then, which has also been bombed in recent days by Israel, despite there being no Hamas there whatsoever. Blind eye cast of that, of course, in our media. We hear these demands for Hamas to return the 229 hostages they hold, and well, they should, but Israel is currently holding some 1,500 Palestinian hostages from the West Bank. Where's the cry for their return? Land grab. Mark my words, and if this leaked report is legitimate, it's certainly believable. But if it is legitimate too, and time will tell that our government support or assist in this, then we'll be complicit in ethnic cleansing. I can't live with that. Can you? Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where twisting the truth and pulling a fast one isn't just for oppressors and sycophantic governments providing them with cover and acting in their favour. It always comes back to the media, and the BBC is one of the worst offenders, proving itself thus just this weekend gone. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.